校があって、その学校全体で3人。
Welcome to the lazyfluency podcast, where we have casual conversations switching between English and Japanese so that you can learn from and with us along the way. I'm Joey.
And I'm Yami.
And the topic of the day is dying towns. But before we get into that, make sure to like, subscribe, follow, and drop a review on a platform you're listening on. We appreciate the support. With that out of the way, dying towns. At this point, most everyone knows that Japan's population is shrinking, and there are plenty of reasons as to why. But today I want to talk about what it actually feels like to live in a dying town. The first distinction I want to make when discussing this is that a rural town and a dying town are not the same thing. I'll be talking about my experiences living in a location in the United States that is a rural town, but it is growing. But initially, I want to speak about the experiences over the last 2 weeks, or maybe you've had more experiences here than I have, about a place that actually is, I've checked the population statistics, dying over time. I don't know if there's any distinctions that come to you atop of the head when you're thinking about things that you notice, but the first thing that I noticed is everybody knows, right? Population shrinking, not that many young people in Japan, but what you do notice is when you do see a young person, and what I've noticed is when you see a young person in what I would say this dying town, they're almost always a minority or an immigrant from some other country. And I think that is probably why, because there's less demand in places like rural Japan, but I don't know if you had any thoughts about that. Have you noticed that?
今住んでるところは多分ね、まあちょっと特殊で、私が今住んでるところは大学があるから、そこに割と若めのなんて言うんだろうね、医療従事者とか、あと学生の人が住んでるんだけど、でもそういう人たちがいなくなったら、多分もう結構高齢の人たちしか住まなくなっちゃうっていうのは事実であるかな。
Well, in this case, it's more of like they're commuting to the town, but I wouldn't say they're like members of the town. Like, I know plenty of your friends literally live in Tokyo and commute here just for school, right?
そうだね。
And so that's, I think, different from like the normal population. But I remember like this was this week where I'll talk about it later, but I finally decided just to pick up a bike in Japan. But when I noticed, because in my head, anytime I see somebody that has any color of their skin in Japan, I'm like, oh, my homie. Not that necessarily my homie, but it's rare, I feel like, in Japan when you see anybody who's not Japanese. And we walked into this store and it was like 3-4 people. I'm like, wait a second. In this current moment, Aimi is the only person who's Japanese. Like that I can see. And then I noticed, I'm like, oh, they're young too. And then that's when you mentioned that there was a large, I can't remember what population that you mentioned. Do you remember what the ethnic population was? Like in this town, there's like a immigrant population that was like larger than I expected. I don't know if you remember.
はいはいはい。なんか多分、農業を学ぶために、なんていうんだ、東南アジアかなから来てる人たち多分いて、1年前ぐらいかな、なんかベトナムの女の子18歳ぐらいの子が道に迷ってて、で、私になんかここはどうやって行くのみたいな。なんか家に帰れなくなったかなんかで聞いてきて、で、外国人だからさ、それこそ日本語もできないし、英語もちょっと拙かったんだよ。で、なんとか Google 翻訳を使って会話してたんだけど、農業、椎茸のなんか育て方みたいな農業を学ぶために来たみたいな感じだったから、多分そういう関係でここに来てる人もいるし、あとは多分ローカルのレストランとか開いてる人、例えばさ、インドカレー屋さんとか、あと中華料理屋さんとかあるんだけど、そういうお店をやってる人たちもいるから、少しだけど外国の人は住んでるかな。
I mean, with regards to what you were saying earlier, the second thing that I've been noticing is literally just from a year ago when I was last here, many of the shops, not just the one you're talking about, but I think, oh gosh, what was another? This is, I don't remember where I can't remember off the top of my head, but I remember learning about another one that we went to last year. But a lot of these shops are closing, and I know that they might have their own other reasons for why they might have closed. They might not be financial, but at least from my perspective, it seems so Obviously in the pandemic, there was a bunch of people closing down shops and other reasons, et cetera, et cetera. But I feel like another thing that I notice is, so let me compare back to where I live in the United States. Yes, there's like an older population, but I think that the key things about like a rural town is it not necessarily that the town is dying. It's more so that it's the same, like it's not really, explosive growth and has a lot of the same types of people. Like, and you'll see a lot, of, especially where I lived, like a lot of big Christian families, and almost all of them stay inside the same location. But in here, I feel like one of the reasons you never see kids, although there is an elementary school, is because they all leave. Like they just leave. And so in any location we're at, it always feels like there's a 20 or 30 year gap between us and everybody else, which kind of honestly feels like I'm in like some apocalypse film. But
まあでもなんか、今の住んでるところは、本当に田舎のところに比べたらまだマシな方だと思うよ。なんでかっていうと、もう田舎の方、例えば島とかのレベルになっちゃうと、学校があって、その学校全体で3人、5人とか、そんな感じだから、もう一学年に1人しかいないとかね。なんならその学年も小学校って1から6年まであるんだけど、1年生1人、4年生1人、6年生1人とか、そういうのもなんかあるらしいから、なんなら島とかだと、その島に学校がないから、フェリー乗って、その本州っていうかなんていうの、まあより大きい、その都会の方に行って、学校行くっていうのもあるから、実際友達で長崎住んでる人がいて、その子が、その、フェリーで、学校来てた子いたよとか言ってたから、すごいよね。
I think I talked about before when we had an episode on population before. I don't know, it was in the 30s or something like that, where, yeah, I talked about a documentary film, which is like, it wasn't supposed to be depressing, but to me, it felt like it was one of the most depressing films I've ever seen, where it was supposed to show like the life in this small town and how like precious it is, but I was feeling that vibe. I was like, wow, this is such a nice town. And then at the end of the film, over the documentary, I think it was filmed over the course of like 5 years, we learned that almost all the people who were the protagonists of our film died just of natural causes in that 5 year span. Like there's this guy who, what was it? Like every morning he would do these rock arrangements, I think, like outside. And then also, this is what I don't know if you were actually quoting my previous reference from me, or maybe this was just your other knowledge, but yes, in they had a combined elementary high school of 3 students. Like they're all from elementary, shogaku, chugaku, koukou, and it was 3 students. And so that was crazy. So I know this place isn't that bad, but like I said, that's why I feel like I feel like the place of Word is being held up by the fact that it's of its proximity to Tokyo. And I don't feel like there was a proximity to Tokyo, then it might be more like the other locations. But one of the other things that I think I'm not sure if you feel this way, is that there aren't really, another one of the things about I feel like when a town is dying is that I'm thinking, I guess this is kind of with the high school example as well, is that most, like the more, what would I say? The things that are less niche slowly start to, or more niche slowly start to fade and fade. And I feel like the example of there was this really good, I don't want to give away too much information, but shop that wasn't Japanese food nearby, and then it ended up closing. And I know it might be for its own reasons, but for me, it's like one of the other signs that your local town is dying is that you start to notice that the things that are the least generalizable, or like I think another example of this is how the bike shops primarily only sell what are they called, mamachari?
Mamachari?
Yeah, mamachari, which is like exclusively meant bikes meant for older Japanese, like
older じゃないけど、
whatever.
ママだね。
Moms, for Japanese moms, and they're like, I don't know if they're European style or mixed between, but they're like laid back. They have a basket in the front. So have you felt like any for me, I feel I've noticed almost every time, like, oh, this was clearly, there is no youth being considered in the products in this store. You know what I'm saying? Like when you walk in, you're like, the demographic for below 30 was not even in consideration for this entire store.
ね、 なんか具体的な例はちょっと挙げられないけど、なんだろうね。なんか例えばお店に行ってさ、その若者のものがないってことでしょ？
At least with the stuff, like at least for me, because especially when I contrast it to like going to Tokyo, which is such a completely different experience. Even though Tokyo is, all of Japan is suffering from this problem. Tokyo is just interesting because like everybody, it's like an immigration thing, right? Where you use immigration to solve the population problem, but it doesn't actually solve the problem. It just puts it off further. It's like all the young people are fleeing to Tokyo, kind of situation at the moment. But I mean, I definitely notice it. Like you can't buy a video game anywhere here. There's not a single place you could do it, right?
それは別にさ、若者が、例えば、100人、この住んでるとこ今100人人口がいますと。で、若者が、10人しかいなかろうが、80人もいようが、街に100人しかいないからさ、そのゲームを扱う意味がない気がするんだけど。
I mean, if there was enough in a young, it's such a market, right? I'm saying if there were enough people doing it, I think you'd expect to see some way you could get. I think you have to go like 30 minutes away from here to get to any place you could buy any sort of game, right? Or maybe put it this way: beer is very easily accessible here because old people. I mean, obviously people drink in Japan, but as we talked about in a previous episode, Japanese youth are drinking less, right? So I would not be surprised that in the future, if there's like some population decrease problem, it's still continuing. You'll have these towns which are old people, but they don't have as many bars because people don't drink as much. But maybe they still play video games. So instead of having izakayas, you'll have I don't know, whatever game stores or whatever. Do you know what I'm saying? I think it is just a demand thing.
でも逆にさ、なんだろう。年齢が高い人たち、スペシフィックに、なんて言うんだろう。マーケティングしてるものが近くにあるっていうわけでもなくない？例えばさ、杖だけを売ってるスペシャルティの店とかなくない？別に。
Well, I talk about it more in the arrangement. Like there's a general hardware store. And if I'm comparing it to like the hardware stores I've been to, my dad's done a lot of construction. I've helped him with it. The whole store and hardware stores tends to be geared towards builders, like people actually like wood, a whole bunch of wood everywhere.
いや、それはここが田舎でそういうなんて言うんだろう、農業してる人たちがそういう木材使ったり自分で DIY したりっていう人が多いから、ホームセンターが、ね、
I'm agreeing with you. I'm saying, but when you go into the store, so that's my expectation. Probably 50 or 60% of the store is geared towards housewives. What I'm talking about. There's a cutoff section in the halfway through a store, or the left side only, which is like half or less of the store is towards construction, and the other half is like, laundry detergent, pillows, futon.
別にハウスワイフ towards じゃなくない？
To me, I know, I'm just saying from my perspective, that is not, I don't know other Americans out there.
ただの日用品ってなだけでさ、別に主婦めがけてさ、売ってる商品ではないと思う。
I'm just saying normally that'd be in a different store. And the way I read that is it's just a large enough market that you don't want to primarily cater to just the, like, okay, so hardware store in the US, you're not finding, at least the one I'm thinking, like Home Depots. It's like all wood, you have like walling, paneling, like, maybe an outdoor section with rocks. And like,
わかった。そういう木材とかしか売ってないってことでしょ？
Primarily, yeah, that's like 95%.
でもそれさ、あれだよ。例えば、ホームセンター行くと、日本のホームセンター行くと大体木材とかね、作る系の DIY のやつと、プラスで、ディタージェントとか、日用品が結構売ってるんだけど、もうトイレットペーパーとかも売ってるのね。で、それは、なんか、ファーマシー、日本語でだとドラッグストアなんだけど、ウェルシアとか、あと杉薬局とかそういう、ドラッグストア。でも、薬はもちろん売ってるのよ。で、プラスで日用品、あと食品とかも売ってるから、多分日本のそういうショップが、いろんな、なんて言うんだろ 商品を扱ってるってだけで、なんて言うんだろう、このお店だからこれしか売らないっていうスタイルではない気がする。そういうなんかドラッグストアとかホームセンターに関しては。
I mean, I would say that anything that we're talking about, like recent, like population's been dropping for quite a while. So it's kind of hard to say, like, what is, sorry, go ahead.
あと、田舎の、お店になればなるほど、その、一つのお店で、すべてのことが完結するようになってる気がする。例えば東京行ったらさ、スペシャルティーショップスはいっぱいあるのよ。その靴下だけしか売ってません。帽子だけしか売ってませんとかね。だけど、田舎ってさ、そのショップがさ、そもそも、ショップの全体の数が少ないし、だから一つ一つのショップに対して、その一つのショップが、いろんなバラエティの、グッズを売ってないと、まあ、なんていうの、住んでる人も不便になるから、ね、まあ、コンビニみたいな感じ。コンビニってなんてコンビニエンスってことね。そうそうそう。
So, I do agree with that, but and again, maybe this is a small distinction between that I'm not even fully aware how to make the complete distinction between rural, somewhere that is rural and shrinking population versus somewhere that's rural and increasing population. Because it might be the case that it's what you're saying, where like you have to have more general shops and smaller niches when you have a rural population. But what I'm also saying is, like, for example, even though the smaller, I think it's almost the same population size. I checked between where I live in the U.S. and here. I didn't know if you knew that, but they're around the same population size. Where in the town in America, it's growing. A lot more Californians are coming in, and I don't know what that'd look like in Japan. Maybe people from Tokyo coming in. And so even though in theory you'd think, oh, it's rural, so you can't have these specialty shops, you see way more attempts at it, if that makes sense. Like, every time I come back, I do see a cycling of shops, but I see a consistent cycling, and those spots get filled in quickly. Whereas when I've noticed, where I think this is the distinction between rural and when I say it's like rural and shrinking, is I've noticed there's a lot of shops that even they've been I don't know, I've never seen them open, and they've been closed, like permanently closed, for over a year now. At the very least, from when I've seen them, no one's done anything. All the signs are still there. It still looks like they're operating from the outside. The building is just left there.
それね、またあれなんだよ。Another problem でさ、その例えばまあお店がもともとあって何らかの理由でまあクローズしちゃったと。でそれがずっと開かないままもうね1年ぐらい放置されてるっていうのは。
I think over, honestly. There's a pizza place.
だね。でなんかあれね普通にそのアメリカでも一緒かどうかわかんないんだけど、そのなんていうんだろう、建物を壊したりさ、なんかまっさらな状態にするのにもお金がかかるから、なんて言うんだろう。もし、その次に、同じ場所を借りる人とか、テナントって言うんだけど、が、いなければ、そのままにした方がお金はかからないんだよ。よくない？なんかさ、コンクリートとかもさ、あれ、なんて言うんだろう、壊すのにすごいお金がかかるらしくて、だから、その理由で残ってるんじゃないかって思う。
Well, I'm not saying that there aren't like economic reasons for it. And for example, you don't have to demolish a building. You could always, repurpose the insides. That happens quite a lot in the US, where they'll just, remove the signs and things like that. But I'm just saying that even the signs aren't removed. It looks like one day he just said, I'm done, and it's just been there. Or like another example, there are political signs all over for like politics, and I'm not sure. I don't know if you know either. I don't know whether these political signs are talking about some sort of recent election cycle, or they've just been here for years and no one has messed with them or changed anything.
なんかそれに関してはもうだからどこに貼ったかも忘れてんじゃない？そういうさ選挙ポスターとかってさ適当に貼ってんじゃん、あれ多分。適当っていうかあれだけどさ、別に何枚貼ったとか把握してないんじゃない？だからさそのままにずっと置いておいてるだけ。
Well, that's what I'm saying. It feels like I have an impression of an apocalypse movie where it's like I'm watching somebody who made a set about what they'd imagine rural Japan to look like. And it just doesn't change because they're still filming the movie. So they have to make sure everything's exactly the same. And that's kind of how I don't know. I feel like, I noticed, oh gosh, this is another sign where you see I've slowly seen in the train sign more of when you go like we go to the train and the train boarding from the like the rural place to go to Tokyo. There's these like place for ad sections, and I've noticed that the ad to here's a place for an ad section have slowly been increasing. When you just have it blank and there's just like a sign saying that you could have your ad here. But yeah. Whereas, let me give you my example. Like was it in where I live in the United States? You don't notice that. You like I felt, and I know it's like very classical rural. My dad will say all the time, our population is not even that high. It's literally breaking like 30,000, I think. And he's like, oh, like there's way too many people in the city, and you do actually have this thing where there's a huge influx of car traffic, and I feel like, you know how I hate cars. Everybody knows I hate cars. I was a whole other thing today. I realized something that I might want to make a topic, a whole video about, not podcast video about. But I feel it's the reverse. You have like a constant, especially with a college town. You're talking about this being a college town, but I don't. And maybe this might be true or not. I don't entirely know what percentage of people just commute or actually live here. But at least in the college town I live, the people live there for the entire like term, and then they'll go back at the end. And you really feel when the college towns are coming in, there's actually a lot of youth throughout the town. There'll be, and that might be because I'm like, actually, I don't want to give too much information. But yeah, whereas I don't actually feel that here. I don't actually think I see anytime we eat anywhere, anybody who's youth, like, I don't really feel like the students are part of the local market. Do you know what I'm saying? They probably are, maybe with some stuff directly close to.
あれだよ、スチューデンツがそもそもいなかった、スチューデンツとかワーカーズがここにいなかったら、この街は多分廃れてると思うから、もうビッグマーケットだと思うけど。Is that what you mean?
Oh, no, I mean like seeing other, maybe just like the times that I go out and see stuff, but what I'm saying when I'm in the United States and like during the, when school's in session, you'd be thinking, wow, there are a lot of young people in this town. And then they leave during like the summer, and you're like, oh, they're still like young people, but they're like farming families, which you don't even see here. Here, I feel like even the youth, like aside from elementary school, like, aside from, did you say there wasn't a high school? There's no high school even?
小学校、中学校あるけど、高校はなくて。で、なんか、コロナの前に大学の前にタピオカショップがあったのよ。タピオカ結構流行ってたからね。今はちょっと流行ってるのかよくわかんないけど。で、そのタピオカショップがあったんだけど、コロナになって、学生がね、多分、2、3年来なかったのかな。なんでかっていうと、そのオンライン授業で、だからみんな実家の方に帰っちゃうのね。その、スチューデンツの中には、地方出身の人もいるから。で、オンラインの授業ってなるとさ、別に学校の近くに住む必要もないから、自分の実家に帰って、学校の授業を受けるみたいな感じにしてる人が多かったのね。だからさ、大学の周りに残ってる学生が少なくなっちゃって、で、そのタピオカ屋さんはもう結局、学生が少なくなっちゃって潰れちゃったんだけど、ね。
Yeah, I actually didn't realize that. Yeah, that there's probably was a substantial effect on the local economy just from sending people to online classes, which, yeah, which especially in a town like this, when something, goes out of business, I don't feel like there's an easy way for people here to get like startup capital to make, you're not going to see investment from Tokyo. You're going to be somebody from Tokyo be like, wow, I really think there's a market here. So it's like once something is gone, it's gone. And
なんかね、わかる。さ、東京だとさ、スペシャルティのさ、ショップが今いろいろあるけどさ、そういうものを、そういうお店を持っててもさ、なんていうの、誰かしら来るじゃん。東京に来て、それを目当てにして来る人もいるからさ。だけど、こういうところで、そういう、なんていうの、あんまりスペシャルティしすぎると、もうそもそも、需要がないからさ、ね、絶対潰れちゃうっちゃ潰れちゃうよね。だから、どれだけこの、 ここに住んでる人口の需要に応えることができるかで、店の存続は決まると思う。からスーパーとかは絶対生き残るじゃん、みんなお買い物するから。だから不思議なことにこの私が住んでるところはスーパーが何個あるんだ、4つぐらいあるのかな。でコンビニも多分4、4、5個近くにあって、だから田舎の割には割と結構さ、スーパー、コンビニとかいろいろあるから、まあ驚いたっちゃ驚いて。
Well, I think that's because of this, like as well as the youth population. But I do want to talk about just because maybe it all seems negative, which all the things I said I don't think are necessarily negative, but I do think there are some positive aspects, especially since I was recently in Panama, which I never really encountered personally in Japan, and it gave me flashbacks to when I was in Panama. And one of those is when there's, when there aren't that many people and the like who are there consistently, who are like actually living in residence, you encounter a lot of the same people very commonly. And yesterday I saw an interaction when I was just walking where one Japanese lady is walking, another person goes around a blind corner and they just turn around and she goes, I don't remember the name, whatever. She goes, oh, it's blank. And she goes, oh, it's you. And it's like, I haven't seen you in 10 years. You may be thinking,
10 years じゃなくて、
whatever, I don't know, 1 year?
One
Was it 1 year? Okay, I don't remember what it was. But and you might be thinking, oh, that's not common enough. But the thing is that I feel like in a big city like Tokyo, I don't like that kind of experience. And then seeing them, they had a whole conversation, and they were the only two people like it was like us and them, and like you could do a full 360 and there's nobody else in this entire thing. So you have a lot of like these quiet moments, which I do like. And then I feel like more than I've seen, in other locations in Japan, you do have like a closeness to the people, as well as like the people who manage the restaurants. When you enter a restaurant, there's like a huge like pause. There's like 3, 4, 5 minutes. You're just sitting there. And they walk up to you, have a small conversation. You order. It's another 20 minutes. I feel like the notion of time is like very chill, which is like if you're in a rush might be a bad thing, but I kind of enjoyed it. I don't know how you feel about the buying, the experience, like buying like food here versus like in Tokyo and comparing it. Where I feel in Tokyo, especially a lot of you even have like a time, like you have to leave within an hour, which can seem like a lot. But if you're getting like shabu shabu, if you know what that is, which is like whole like Japanese hot pot or whatever, an hour is actually like, if you're trying to get maximum value, that feels like quite a lot. Or like ramen, I think that was a really good example where they just have people, sorry, not ramen, sushi, where like they're really trying to, get people go through, like, especially like if it's on a weekend, you're like constantly feel like you're getting
回転率を上げるとかね。
Yeah, to improve the efficiency. But here it's always like you'll have like, it's very common where you just enter a store, and when you enter, sit there for like 40-50 minutes because that's how long it's going to take, and then leave. No one else has come in, and then I just wonder, how do you operate the store? But and maybe you don't. But a lot of these do. I do like the place we went to a second ago. Had that vibe, I feel like.
あそこは多分ね、ちょっと目立たないっていうのもあるかもしれないけど、あそこの雰囲気めちゃめちゃ好きだよね。なんか一人のオーナーがなんか全部料理プリペアしてて、でそこもなんか農家と直接契約してんのか分かんないけど、その旬の野菜を使っていろんなね国のなんか料理を作るみたいな感じなんだけど、なんかあそこの雰囲気ね、とても好き。ハーブティー飲んで、なんかちょっとケーキ食べたりとかね。
Yeah, but I think that like environment is only really for example, if you had a whole bunch of business, like a bunch of people coming in, I don't think you can maintain that. But at the same time, I was looking at the population over time, and I don't think it's people moving away. I think like year by year, just people dying. With it shrinking, and there was some influxes I could see because it had the non-Japanese population compared to the Japanese population, and the non-Japanese population was consistent, but the total population kept going down, and so I think it was just the like household owners like slowly dying, which looking at the stats was just depressing. But it's pretty gradual though. It was like I think 100 or 200 per year people. The population shrinking. But anyways, I don't know if it was like negative. I wasn't supposed to be as negative. I was actually enjoying my experience with both Tokyo and this like this dying town vibe in a weird way. But I think it maybe came off more negative than I wanted to. But yeah, just because the town is dying doesn't mean it's not pleasurable to be in, I guess, is my takeaway. I don't know.
なんかね、ごめんなさい。ちょっと喉が今ね、ちょっとやばくてね。田舎に住むのはなんかいいんだけど、なんか、まあ人によるか。私は田舎にずっといると、なんかね、何も刺激がなくてね、脳がね、ちょっとね、おかしくなるから、東京に行きたいんだけど、でも東京に行くまでがちょっと時間かかってね、それもすごい疲れるのよ。だから、まあまあ都会なところに住みたいなとは思ってる。
Yeah, I mean, agreed.
So.
But yeah, let us know what you think. Do you live in a dying town? If it is as bad as, like, how bad? Are there any very sad dying town stories with 3 children being in your middle school, elementary school, and high school? Yeah, let us know. 戻りました。
We are back.
今回、あゆみは秋葉原の話をする。
Okay, so we went to Akihabara to play a board game with my friend, and I want to recommend one place, which is it's a place to play board games and or video games, and the cost was 2,000 yen for 6 hours. It was, yeah.
4時間は1500円でしたっけ
No, 6 hours.
いや、で、6時間は2000円で、1時間だけだと1時間、1000円 ?1 時間1000円だけど、2時間、3時間、4時間はあまり値段が変わらない。
Yeah. And I found that place was really good because, you know, like, when you go to karaoke and then use that place to do something else other than karaoke, then the cost is pretty expensive. Like karaoke can be 1,000 yen for, I don't know, 2 hours or something. 1 hour, 2 hours. So if you want to do like a, how do you say, like meeting up with friends, then I recommend going to a cafe or the place which I recommended this time. So
まあ、名前言わなかったけど、秋葉原にある。まあ、問題なのは、アメリカと違って、どこかで自分の、なんていう持ち込んだボードゲームとか、ビデオゲームやりたいときは、時間じゃなくてお金払わないといけない。アメリカだとほとんどのゲームショップは無料でそのテーブルとかを使える。なんかわかる？なんかニューヨークでも同じだった。そのボードゲームの。
That's pretty good.
でも日本だとそれがなかなか見つけられない。それが問題。で、どこでそのゲームできるかというと、いろんな選択肢あるんだけど、まず、そのインターネットカフェ。でもインターネットカフェはややこしくて、そのなんていうか。
Oh yeah, it was like you have to how to say apply for like become a membership, and then to be a member, you have to upload your ID, like driver's license or like passport, or it can be health insurance, so that to prove that you're a actual individual.
またアップダウンロードしないといけないというのもある。
Yeah.
で、URL コードと他の URL コードを両方使わなくちゃいけなくて。
QR コードね。
そう、QR コード。
And
で、
that was
それ
like,
できても、なんていうか、自由な部屋がなかった。なんか私たちが、使いたかったやつがなかったでしょ。
yeah.
なんかそもそも全部をやったんだけど、結局何ももらわなかった。で、また、ネットカフェはダメ。そのことに関しては。もちろん他のやり方、ネットカフェのいいところあるけど、
It depends on the shop though. The shop we went was like one specific company which did the, how do you say, first procedure?
First
like,
procedure?
like online. Like the worker was like
そう。
communicating with us online, and then like it was so hard to dictate him talking.
普通になんか受付あったんだけど、誰もいなかった。人いたんだけど、その人と話す代わりに、オンラインでなんかドライブスルーみたいな感じだった。なんか、こんにちは。で、すごく聞こえづらいの。みたいな。で、じゃあ、ネットカフェ。また、他の選択肢はカラオケ。でも、あゆみが前に言ったように、カラオケあまり、おすすめできない。田舎の方だとカラオケはそんなにお金かからないけど、東京のカラオケはいつも、個人的に、なんか最後にやったのは1時間1500円で、なんかほぼ何ももらわなかった。フリードリンクというのもあるんだけど、多分6時間でどれぐらいかかるかな、カラオケだと。
No, free time is cheaper for that. Like, if you want to do 6 hours.
カラオケ、どれぐらいかかる？
I don't know, like, it can be 3,000 yen.
東京の話？
Yeah, probably.
今、何でしたっけ？その秋葉原の場所は2000円だけだったから。で、何でしたっけ？他の選択肢、もちろん他の選択肢というのは、他のボードゲームカフェという、エピソードっていうかメインチャンネルでも話したことあると思うんだけど、でもその問題なのは、なんていうか、コスパの話だけ。この秋葉原はもともと、友達が言ってたのは、まず、こういうような場所がなかった。自分がなんか、このゲームで他の場所でやりたいと思っているなら、東京でできなかった。でも PSP の話覚えてる？そう、PSP の、が発売、なんていうか、めっちゃ人気の PSP ゲームがあって、みんなは同じところで遊びたかったから、こういう秋葉原の店は、ここで PSP やりますよと言ったんだけど、PSP はもちろんそんなに流行らなく、今でもなんか流行ってないと思うんだけど、その PSP だけじゃなくて、スイッチ、自分のボードゲーム、自由にこの場所でできる。で、めっちゃ安い。名前、言わないけど、いろんなこういう秋葉原での、何でしたっけ、会場、名前あったと思う。集会場。gathering place、があると思う。そう。自転車の話する？ドッジボール？どうぞ。
So we went to like a meetup event, where we did an American style dodgeball, and yeah, that was like pretty a big group, 30 people, and the interesting is like out of 30 people, only 5 people were Japanese, and then most of them were foreigners. Yeah.
オーストラリア、イギリス、アメリカと、他のアジアの国だった気がする。でも懐かしかった、個人的に。日本でもドッジボールとあるという話聞いたんだけど。
Yeah, but like a little bit different rule. Yeah.
で、ボールは同じだった？違う？
Like in Japan, we use slightly bigger balls. Yeah, like
その赤いやつ？なんか映画で出るやつ。知ってる？
I don't know.
すごく大きい赤い。
I know that's for like a sport festival, right? 赤玉、白玉、大玉送り、right?
大玉、いや、普通にドッジボールの話してる。
I don't know what you're talking
about. そう。とにかく懐かしかった。最後にやったのは多分10年以上だと思って。いや、それ多分15年かな。中学校。高校やったっけ？高校やったかもわかんない。
But yeah. So yeah. Also like when you go to a meetup event for the first time, it's pretty difficult to make friends if you're an introvert or like if you're shy. So like I've been trying to be more sociable recently because I want to make friends. But like, you know, it's So like make friends in a different language is pretty, how do you say, like challenging to me. So I was like, I chickened out the other day. So yeah, that was my 反省 then. Yeah.
友達の話何回したことはあると思うんだけど、おすすめがあったらぜひ教えてください。今友達作りには手伝えるかも。And we're back with the final section. And if you made it to the final section, that means you send an email to lazyfluency@gmail.com with a comment, question, language related, and or otherwise. And this week we have a comment from Dolgas. I'm not sure. New commenter. Thank you very much. And it's regarding our last week on episode on Halloween. And it says, I think John from Only in Japan made a good point on this. Having this big marketing campaign with a quirky logo and making a big song and dance about not coming to Shibuya on the night of the 31st is exactly not what is going to dissuade unwanted foreigners from coming to Shibuya on the night of the 31st. Thank you so much for the comment. But I would like to say, and if I was responding at the time, that he and the people thinking this would have been wrong. And I maybe if you're not in Japan, you would think that doing this would not be sufficient, and it entirely, I guess it wasn't 100% sufficient, but there's two things I want to say. One, foreigners aren't the people that were primarily trying to be dissuaded. It was actually Japanese people. People getting drunk was not just a foreigner thing, but turns Japanese people get wasted like hard on Shibuya as well. And so that wasn't the only population that, people were concerned about. And the majority of people, to be clear, in Japan, even on Tokyo, on Shibuya Halloween, is Japanese guys getting drunk, like in Shibuya. And then the second thing, before we talk about some other updates, is actually, or do you want to talk about what ended up happening on Halloween Shibuya?
なんかその渋谷で来ないでって言ってたやつある。そうそう。で、本当に半分ぐらいしか、例年の半分ぐらいしか来なかったらしいんだよ。でもまあ、その中でも普通に、コスチューム着て行った人はいたっぽいけど、でもそんなに、ね、行かなくて、ちょっと正直驚いたっちゃ驚いたし、なんかそう、なんていうの、暴動事件っていうか、なんていうの、今までさ、トラックが横転したとかなんか、いろんな社会問題みたいな起きてたけど、今回そういうのもなかったっぽかったから、なんかすごいよね。多分他の、でも今年、なんだよね、確か、新宿がやばかったらしいね。なんか、渋谷に行かない代わりに新宿に結構行ったっぽくて、で、池袋のやつはなんか普通に健全でみんなお酒飲まないし何も起こんなかったと思うんだけど、多分他の町が頑張ってこういうのやりますよって主催者ありでやったから、渋谷にあんまり人行かなかったのかなっていうのはある。
I mean, the first thing I want to say is that there actually was a larger police presence. So actually, something that they didn't, I don't think, mention before is that they ended up actually enforcing. It wasn't just a sign dance that they said, "Oh, don't come." They actually was it they walled? I saw the news. It looked like they walled off the sections that were outside the walkway, so you could only or taped them. So traffic was being forced to come through, and they had policemen anytime people were trying to especially people who didn't know. Or to just stand around loitering was basically being prohibited for a period of time. I don't know if it was for the whole day or not. The other thing is, I think there's just so many examples of this, whether it be coronavirus or throughout the time or oh gosh, there was another event that I think that was a good illustrator of this, but I can't remember at the moment. But when the Japanese government says something as a recommendation, a lot of times it works with surprising adherence, and I think that's a cultural thing. There's also obviously there was a police presence, but generally generally speaking, people don't want to go have issues if they don't have to, and they don't see it as a battle they're fighting for. And so especially with other wards just offering to do it there, Ikebukuro. I don't know about Shinjuku. Did people just it just Shikai kara they went to Shinjuku, or I didn't hear much about the Shinjuku.
Shinjuku is the biggest station だから行くんじゃない？大体。
Well, no, but first it was Shibuya, right? So I'm saying, I didn't hear much about the Shinjuku part.
なんか渋谷と新宿はね、私のイメージではなんか似たような感じがする。うん。 なんか街の雰囲気がね。
Yeah, and you're saying, did any events happen? I actually never heard about Shinjuku. Or did anything
わ
like...
かんないけど、新宿がすごい人来たっていうのは聞いた。
And I guess I was supposed to say this was only something that was being pushed for by the ward head of Shibuya. So this wasn't like as far as I know, a general Tokyo movement. So that's something to keep in mind. Like Ikebukuro explicitly, the ward head explicitly wanted people coming there, for an organized event. And I don't know. I haven't heard anything about the Shinjuku incident, but maybe the person was whoever was managing Shinjuku area was completely happy with there being people there. So
なんか面白いよね。絶対さ、なんかさ、やるなって言われてさ、やりたくなっちゃうものじゃん。そういう心理じゃん。立ち入り禁止って絶対立ち入りしたいじゃん。
Well, I feel like not in Japan. In America, yeah, people do it just out of spite. If they do that, oh my god, you'd have like people do it even though they know it's illegal. Remember the whole thing when you were in New York? There was the whole something for speed. You don't know the Twitch streamer jumping on top on Manhattan.
何ユニオンスクエアだっけ
Yeah, that was like the first day you were in Manhattan or
The first じゃなかった。
second or whatever.
いや、first weekend かなかね。
Yeah, but yeah, people like obviously I don't think that person was trying to do anything illegal, but just ended up getting out of hand. But I mean, there's a whole bunch of different examples. Like right now, like we were talking about last week about all the different pranksters and other stuff in Japan. Like people don't, and especially Americans. Like for the views, anything is worth it. I will also say, I guess an additional fact before I say something I really want to say, which is not only was it like half of whatever the previous year before, there were also more people on the 28th in Shibuya than there were on the 31st.
あ、そうなの
Yeah, that was in the news report. What news report? Well, I officially made it onto the Televi Asahi news. And
It was like snippet.
it was 3 seconds or 4 seconds, but I was technically there. And this is the second time I've made it onto one of the biggest news, what's it called? The last time was the newspaper, though. This time was my first time on the television. But I officially on the big screen, technically. I'm still debating about
でも
what...
さ、
go
面白い
ahead.
のがさ、10分ぐらいさ、インタビューにさ、されてたけどさ、結局インタビュー使われてなくてさ、ただのさ、映像だけで使われてたの。
Well, no, it wasn't Eizo. It was...
映像だった。
No. It was the video, right? It was... There was
映像ってビデオじゃん。
Oh yeah, sorry. I meant what's it called? I meant they did show the like 4 seconds of interview, and they did summarize in Japanese text the content of the conversation.
なん
But
かハロウィーンのために来日みたいな書いてあって。
yeah, there was another. Oh gosh, I can't remember. There's a little bit additional information after that they put to there. I think you're just talking about the screenshot I sent you, but they also had some other I can't remember updated text about more than that. I don't remember what it was. But yes, officially, I made it onto Japanese news for basically just being brown and looking pretty okay in an Aladdin costume. But I'll take that. I don't think I'm going to make, it's not really topical anymore, so I might make the Halloween video. So maybe on Twitter, I'll post the link if you guys want to check out the some Japanese listening practice, as well as see me in a Aladdin costume getting interviewed for about 3 seconds at 5:49 inside the video. Then you'll find it entertaining. But that video also goes into a lot of the information we went on. We've talked about right now about what happened, why people go to Ikebukuro, what Shibuya was actually like on Halloween, etc., etc. So I guess my takeaway is, just want to make this clear. This whole notion of unwanted foreigners, I'll be very clear. The whole, from what I remember, the complaining that the ward responded to, the chief of ward, mainly came from business owners complaining.
だってそうだよ、なんか渋谷でそのハロウィーンの日はなんかトイレとかが勝手に使われて、でそこで汚くされたり、あとやっぱりハロウィーンコスチュームだと怖い格好する人もいるからさ、血のりって how do you say? It's like fake blood?
Yeah.
そうとかをなんか、使ってその洗面所がめちゃめちゃ汚くされたりとかね。 あと、ゴミが捨てられたり、まあ、人が増えるからゴミも増えるじゃん。で、勝手にゴミ箱に、捨てられて、ゴミが溢れ返るとか、あと、まあ、不適切な行為とかが、まあ、道でとかわかんないけど、とかがあったりして、お店側としてはすごい、まあ、迷惑だよね。
Business also. They get business, but they didn't seem to complain about that. They get business. These shops get business. I don't understand. I'm not very sympathetic towards the businessmen.
でもなんかさ、面白いのがさ、人が来ることでさ、そういう居酒屋とかもさ、絶対人が集まるじゃん。それはさ、お店の人にとってはいいはずなんだけど、でも、同時に、お店に迷惑になるっていう面もあるから、どっちを取るかによるよね。そういうイベントがあった方が人が集まるからさ、お店側はウハウハだけど。
Something that annoyed me as well is that they're always talking, it's because it's an unplanned event. It's because it's not regular. I mean, bro, if you know it's happening every year, it's planned. As far as I'm curious, just because there's not like an organizing body, like you know what's going to happen every year.
ちゃんと節度を持った人がたくさん来る分にはいいんだと思う。けど、そうやって汚くしたりとか、要するにちょっと民度が低いと、来てほしくないっていうのは、まあわかるっちゃわかる。だってさ、例えば自分の部屋がさ、知らない人にさ、めちゃめちゃ荒らされるようなもんじゃん。自分の部屋がお店としてさ、勝手にトイレ使われるし、騒ぐし、お酒でなんていうの、変な騒動を起こすしとかされたら、やっぱり自分がそうなったらちょっと嫌だなと思うから。
No, I don't even agree a little bit. I think a business, like, it's completely different than your home. And, like, you know it's coming in for business. Like, the only reason people might think it's gross is because they're thinking, oh, they're foreigners and you're being racist. And you're thinking, oh, the foreigners are using my bathrooms. Because Japanese people, like in Shibuya, are getting drunk and, like, passing out and throwing up in people's toilets all the time. I feel like that's probably on the reg. So I feel like the only real difference would be like, oh, it's foreigners doing it this time. But it's not even that many foreigners. Like I said, the vast majority of people, if you've ever been in Shibuya or anywhere in Tokyo, it's always Japanese people. So like I said, I'm not sympathetic. And I think they're just old. Like, I don't know. I'm very critical. It frustrates me how old Japan is. It's a very big bummer. But yeah, so that's kind of what ended up happening. Thanks for the comment, Dual Glass. And yeah, I'm holding myself to it. The Twitter post, I guess maybe I'll link to in the YouTube comment as well. So I will put a link to the interview that I show up as well as a timestamp so you can check out my beautiful Aladdin costume. Yeah. That bell means we reached the end of today's episode. Thanks for joining us, another lazy conversation towards fluency. If you have any language-related questions and are just looking for general advice, send an email to lazyfluency@gmail.com and we might respond in the next episode. Also, make sure to check out our podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and more. We'd appreciate the support. This has been Joey.
And Ayami.
Signing off. Jane!